Hey guys, Saf coming at you with another Raid Shadow Legends video, and in today's video we're going to be looking at update 8.4 in more detail. This introduced 5 new champions, I believe 5 off the top of my head, some rebalances to artifact sets, and a bunch of bug fixes in terms of different champions and things that have been picked up over the last few months. So we're going to take a look at it. We're going to look at some rebalances as well. We're going to look at some damage ratings. This is the first patch notes I've been able to do since we've released the new damage rating algorithm on hellhades.com. So it should help us evaluate how good these heroes are. I'm going to look at all those different things and see if there is anything else in the game that they haven't told you about in the patch notes. So this video is always in 2 parts. The first part is a review of the official patch notes, just kind of going through all the details to see what they've mentioned in there. They always put a large number of bullet point lists right at the bottom of these official patch notes, which actually can be very relevant. So we look at the official ones, and then in the second half we look at the unofficial patch notes, which is basically the information that I have gathered from reviewing the multipliers, things in the game client that not necessarily publicly available. So let's go through this and let's have a look first. So we've got the Impulse and Zeal set. So Zeal is an interesting set because originally when it came out, the description alluded to the fact that it was based on the target's HP. So the set basically increases the damage that you deal depending on a HP threshold. So if you're full HP, you got 7.5% times 4, so it's like a 30% damage boost. We always thought it was based on the target's health, but actually it was incorrectly described, and they changed the description of the set last update to actually say it was based on your health of your champion, which is actually quite important because this is a flat multiplication bonus to your champion. Someone like Rathalos Blademaster, who doesn't have any sort of defense considerations for his A2, this set is actually really good for him because it's giving him flat bonus damage when you don't need ignore defense. Now this will come at a cost if you go beyond the new revised 4-piece set of your ignore defense capacity. So really it's best placed on champions who have no sort of have abilities that ignore defense completely or have incredibly high damage thresholds or some innate ignore defense, right? Someone like Krutraxa might benefit more from Zeal because you don't need as much ignore defense from the artifact sets. So they've changed both Zeal and Impulse, which was almost like a reflex speed pseudo type of set, to be 2 pieces, which I think is very, very good. I think this changes exactly what I want to see more of. Instinct is another one for me, where really going into a 4-piece is just too expensive for what you get. You're always losing something. In this case, Impulse wasn't quite as good as Reflex, so you didn't really want to lose the Reflex chance. Zeal wasn't quite as good as Ignore Defense, so you didn't want to lose that. Having these flexible 2 pieces that we can put next to either a 6-piece variable set or maybe a 4-piece variable with maybe a 4-piece of this, having the flexibility to have all these complicated builds, it might create chaos for us on the optimizer, but for you guys and for us building these heroes, it adds lots more interesting ideas to build different champions out using different build configurations. So it's become a 2-piece set, and it basically means the way that they've kind of positioned it is on average they're worse than they were as a 4-piece, but better as a 6-piece, and obviously they have the 2-piece option. So if you want to run, for example, Reflex plus Impulse, you have 2 chances at that 12% and the 40%. You have 2 different rolls. If you have 6-piece Merciless, and you've got 2 accessories for Merciless, then you could put 2 artifacts for Zeal to give yourself a little bit more bonus damage. So I do think these set changes are great. There's a fundamental problem, and it will be something in the video, and it is something I'm going to talk about in tomorrow's video. The fundamental problem is, how do you get them? It's too difficult to get good artifact sets because the only location you can earn these artifacts is in live arena chess wins, and you have to win 35 fights. That is very difficult. Then we have the rebalance for Queen Eva. I think she's actually quite good for Hydra now. Having a 2 turns A1 100% chance for a block buffs is very rare. I think it's the only one with the 2 turns. I know Ugir does it as well. I think there's another one. I think Panda does. No, Panda doesn't do it. Panda does decrease speed. She will do this on a single target. So it's very good for you to kind of alternate with Ancient Curse. Now, single target damage is the best in Hydra. Having a 50% ignore defense with a double hit is very strong. This Ancient Curse is very good. We're going to look at the damage multipliers in the unofficial patch notes part so you can see the actual increase in step-up damage. But for now, this looks like a great change. She's positioned now to be more than just a campaign farmer, but she can still campaign farm as well. Minaya, they've just uncomplicated, essentially. They've taken away a lot of the conditionals, and they've just made her easier to use. The healing is a little bit better. The passive is a little bit better. A good change, especially if you're using her in Amius. This is a great change. Now we come to my favorite part of these patch notes. It's the little things that we discover that they sneak in, the bug fixes, the changes that we don't really know about. Now, some of these are just visual. A lot of them tend to be inconsequential. Some of them are very, very important. So let's have a look what we've got here. So we've got Bambus 4-leaf will now place sleep debuff on himself with any of his active abilities, even if he's under 10 debuffs. Okay, so that was basically if you got 10 debuffs, he would never sleep. So they've basically made it always apply on top. Kind of makes sense, otherwise this kit doesn't work. We've got a bunch of bug fixes. I wonder if we're ever going to fix the bug where if you lose 3 fights in a row in Live Arena, you have to wait 1 minute to fight again. That is very frustrating. Absolutely frustrating. So we've got a bunch of different bug fixes here to do with some of the new champions. We've got a visual bug with mirror copies and block passive skills. This is an important one. Fixed a bug that caused Polymorph Blessing to apply the sheep debuff when attacking enemies. So block revive was never intended to be a debuff in essence, but in order to make it work, you had to have a status effect, an effect on the dead hero, on the dead champion. So in order to make all of it work, essentially it has to place a block revive debuff, then for that champion to die. Therefore, it's permanently under that debuff and it can't be revived. That's the concept of why it is a debuff, but not actually meant to be a debuff. But because of the way that Narcissus was working in the sense that it was conditional based on the number of buffs and such things. What it meant was when you were placing the debuff, it happened before polymorph checks, which means you were getting polymorphed from the block revive, where other block revive heroes, the check is done after polymorph. So they've moved the phase essentially to fix this problem. It should mean now like people like Narcissus will not get sheeped when they do block revive. There's also another change down here as well, to do with. There's lots of little bug fixes with Narcissus that we've been reporting that they fixed, and with White Queen and Chorus, they should work much better now. There's also another thing here where it's like fixed a bug that caused White King Narcissus and Carnage the Anarch to not place block revive when being under enfeeble. So if you weak hit, you couldn't apply the debuff, which was meant that obviously it was bypassing. So again, they've gone in and they've said no, this debuff block revive will apply even if you weak hit, it's meant to. We got a bug fix with Fina, which is great. We fixed a bug with Harima Celestial Auto activate twice. Yeah, there was weird things going on with Ultimate Death Knight. That was reported to me in the DM, so they've bug fixed that. One important thing which I think I'm going to have to get Ash involved on here is they fixed Harrier's skillful partner to ignore 50% instead of 30% defense. This is something I picked up on when I was doing my sort of damage rating assessments. I discovered that this 30%, when it was meant to be 50%, was only 30%. So they've bug fixed Harrier. Interesting things will come in a video once I've managed to pull myself a Harrier. We got some bug fixes here with Gizmak, Togron. So there was a bug with growing max HP as well with Hydra. They've mentioned this here where something to do with the Hydra's max HP destruction was breaking when you were able to increase your own max HP with Togron's passive, and with I think the new Shadowkin mythical Toshiro, he can increase his HP. So hopefully that has been fixed now, and that has got rid of that. We've got a few little bug fixes with texts and different things in the missions, but generally very good quality of life bug fixes, fixing things like the Narcissus passive interactions, lots of the Ultimate Death Knight passives, fixing some erroneous things that shouldn't be in the game. So that's great. It's a very small patch. There's not much going on in terms of big ticket items, but the Zeal rework, the new champions are really the kind of the big thing, and the rework for Eva here is quite good. So now we come to the unofficial part of the patch notes. This is me basically going into the game client, what you see in the game, and just pulling up some of the secret information that you see that isn't shown. Things like the multipliers, things like the drop rates. None of this information is sort of like going into external servers or anything. It's all what sits in the game that is just behind the scenes. It helps us understand how to build our heroes better. And I also check to make sure things like the ignore defense stuff that heroes have, that champions have, are being applied correctly. I also sometimes get a little bit of insight into things that are coming, but I generally try to keep those things under wraps unless they're going to affect the decisions that you make. If there are things in the game code that we know is coming that some people have an advantage to see, and it is going to affect the decisions you make today, then I kind of let people know. If there's things coming that doesn't affect you and it wouldn't matter if you do something today, then I generally keep it under wraps so that I don't steal player im's thunder. But this is information that we do really need to know so we can understand how to build our heroes and our champions, our builds properly. So first thing to note, there is been a lot of talk about Prism Duels. I haven't mentioned it because actually I didn't know what they really were going to be. I had some inclinations. Playroom have come out now and confirmed it as well, so by the time I've recorded this, it's kind of like already out there. But we are going to get essentially prism shards for souls. They're the same system. They're going to put a limited number of souls, perfect souls, specifically perfect souls, available for you to summon these jewels from. You'll get the jewels from an event, and then you'll be able to summon those souls. Honestly, it's not terrible, because if I go and do an extra Sand Devil tournament, I get a prism jewel, and that gives me a chance of getting a 6-star soul or something, then it's okay. The only thing I don't know how it's going to work is how they're going to select the souls. Is it something that I can choose, because that would be better, or is it just going to randomly pick a set of souls? So what happens if I don't have that hero? Like, it really devalues it, not just from I have to do the event to get the jewels, but it would discourage me from spending. So I don't really know how that's going to work. I think if they do it, you have to at least have those summoning pools limited to what I can use already. Otherwise, there's just no incentive for me to buy it. So we'll have to see how it works in detail, but it looks like there is perfect souls. And the next Forge Pass that we're going to be getting is a Bolster Forge Pass, so get ready for that one. Now, before we get into the rebalances, I have to commend Playroom, because to be honest, as of the last 4 months, their patch notes have been pretty top tier. They've been pretty accurate. There's not really anything that they've overlooked. Most of the time, I don't actually have to sort of catch or pull up anything that hasn't been disclosed. It's been a pretty good patch notes update, at least recently, so bravo to Playroom. So let's talk about the rebalances then. Let's talk about Queen Eva. I haven't got anything here for Minaya because nothing has really changed in terms of damage, just skill set descriptions. But Eva has changed significantly. We can see that her A1 has gone from 2.8 to 3.2. It's a pretty big jump. The A2 has gone from a 2.3 to a 2.8, but it also has a 50% ignore defense. So it's a lot more damage than just that multiplier change. And the AoE has gone from a 3.4 to what I would call the middle average of a 4 times attack. So what does that mean in terms of ratings? Well, we now have the new Hell Hades ratings on the website. These ratings are done based on the best use case in the content area. So for example, in Hydra, we're basically putting the defense numbers against Nightmare Hydra. We're applying things like the AoE damage penalties. We're applying things like the likelihood you're going to have more debuffs if you do more damage based on the presence of debuffs. We increase the stat growth for people like Val, Ninja, Toshiro. So we put them in their best case scenario. Arena is set to around about a 4,000 defense target. We don't really include things like weaken, decreased defense. These debuffs are not counted, simply the number of those debuffs. So these numbers that you see here are never going to be exactly what you build in the game, because this is based on standardized information. Now, in terms of how the heroes are built, these are built with the current 2024 stats in mind. So all of the champions pass through the same build calculator, so they're on equal footing, which means that we take their base stats and we scale them equally. They're all scaled the same way, so that we can evaluate how strong Eva is versus another hero, versus another champion that we have in the game. I keep saying hero because my brain is in Fateless Work, so we call them heroes there, and I've also been playing a lot of AFK Journey. So what do we got going on here? So the A1 here now looks like it's a kind of a strong damage dealer. It's a bit of a middle of the pack, nothing too special. 584, that number is basically reflecting of all the abilities in the game, where does it position? I think it's like 1,970 odd abilities in the game. So she's sitting in like the strong category, which is like the top 50% of skills in the game. The A2 is the one that most people will be interested in because it is the block revive. It is the number 10 strongest arena nuke in the game right now. Number 10. That really puts her to be a high value arena damage dealer now. Especially for Hydra 32, we will mention the block buffs in the patch notes. It puts her as a really viable option for your sort of block buffs plus damage, because half the time with block buffs, you're bringing them without the damage consideration in someone like Ugo, Archbishop, Pinthroy, maybe Mighty Uko, right? They're not damage dealers, but they do a lot of utility. She can be both. She can be a utility and damage dealer. So number 10 Arena, number 32 Hydra Godlike. Early to mid-game content, this is just scaling based on like wave content with defense levels. Early mid-game's about 2,500 defense, late game's more like the 7,000, 8,000s we see in sort of high-end content, so it helps give you an idea of how strong it gets. You can see it's pretty strong in early, but the higher the defense, the better it becomes. So she gets stronger as we progress through the game with that A2. Her A2 now is absolutely top tier. In terms of the A3, it's pretty much like, you know, you can see the penalty that Hydra gives in terms of the A3. Because it's AoE damage, you probably never want to use the A3 in Hydra. You'll always go A2, A1, A2, A1. You'll never use A3. It's just such a poor damage ability that I wouldn't recommend it. You can see it's very, very weak. 1,288. It's the bottom half of abilities. Let's talk about Walmaster Othorion. Now, this guy for me is the best non-void Hydra champion in the game from a legendary tier. The best non-void. Now, that might be a dramatic statement, and there's reasons why I say this in terms of how I recommend you build him. What's particularly special about Walmaster Othorion is, again, he is a damage-based champion with block buffs and decrease attack, with self-buff increase attack, and I think another increase, I can't remember which one it is, that gives an extra turn on 3-turn cooldowns. This ability set is incredibly strong for making sure you get back to your abilities, but also you can deal damage. He has an A2, which is a double hit with enemy max HP. Now, it's going to be hard for you to hit the cap, but even if you can't hit the cap, it's still going to be the best damage option for block buffs. By far, the best damage option for block buffs. In addition to that, he also gains 5% turn meter for every enemy he hits on both of his active abilities, his A1 and his A2, which means if you put him in a Slayer set, considering he is double AoE, you'll get 20% back from his ability on Hydra, which is 4 heads, on top of 20% from Slayer. So every single time this guy takes a turn, he's going to get 40% turn meter back, because the A3 is an extra turn, so you're always going to attack with either the A1 or the A2, and you're going to power your way back around to these abilities very quickly. He's a block buffs, 100% AoE. That is incredibly powerful. I think this guy is the best non-void legendary hero champion in the game for Hydra, hands down. He will go into your team in sort of the brutal nightmare, unless you have like the top tier champions. You can get away with not having block buffs or something of that nature. Most players would almost like, I would put him on the tier of Archer. He's that good because of how difficult it is to find good champions with block buffs that actually can do more than just block buffs, right? We have people like Umbral. It's a great block buffs champion, but it doesn't do anything else. Ugo, decreased defense and block buffs is great, no damage. This guy can do decreased attack, block buffs, and damage, and also be a mischief tank if you want to build him with resistance because of the buffs on his A3. He also gains HP by decapitating heads on the passive. This is new, this is unique. They're starting to realize that they need specifically coded things for decapitation bonuses. So he's a great champion. Now, in terms of the multipliers, he's got a 0.035 target HP with a 1.5 times attack. This is about the same as Marius, the horse that's coming in. Akriz is about a 0.5, but no attack or defense multiplier. So you will need to build quite a hefty build to hit the cap. We're talking 300% crit damage with a lot of ignore defense. I'd recommend 6 Slayer for him. 6 Slayer for him is incredibly good. 6 Slayer with a Cruel to really push it, or with a Zeal, or with an Impulse if you want to rotate abilities quicker. Now, in terms of multipliers, you can see very quickly where he is going to be very good. Hydra and Clan Boss. Everywhere else, he's not going to be very good. His damage is very weak on the A1. It's not very good at all. His A1 damage is quite poor at 2.5 times attack. You can see it's rated really poorly across the board, especially in weak Hydra. It's very, very poor. But the A2 here is very, very good for Hydra and Clan Boss. Toshiro the Bloody is the first mythical champion that is 2 in the same factions. The second, we've got a mythical in every single faction now, so we're going to go back through the factions and add more. He's a Shadowkin. He's a very, very, very interesting. I call this guy Ninja 2.0, but he is very Hydra focused. This update is very Hydra focused. So what have we got? We've got a Toshiro the Bloody. He scales his attack and HP up by 100% on the A2. He also will deal 15% more damage per leech out on the enemy, and he has a passive that whenever he hits a leech enemy, he does another 25% multiplier. It's the combination of a 60% damage multiplier if you have 4 leech on Hydra, plus a 25% flat, on top of 100% HP and attack, on top of the multipliers. He is insanely strong when you scale him up. But do not change form, because if you change form, the scaling goes away. His base form is what makes him really strong in Hydra. It's very, very powerful. So we have a 2.8 times attack with a 0.1 HP. On his base form, he leans more towards attack. He's attack-based champion. His alternate form, he leans towards HP. The A2 is the big hit. It's 4 enemies. So essentially, on one target, it's a very powerful ability. Let's have a look at the multipliers. Immediately, you can see he is the second strongest ability in the game for Clan Boss. The second strongest ability in the game for Clan Boss. This is only beaten by Jintoro. because he's attacking the same target 4 times. He scales really well. He's actually quite good for Clan Boss. I wouldn't necessarily lock a mythical into Clan Boss, but he scales really well. Number 17 for Hydra, Godlike as well. So very, very strong boss killer for those 2 areas. His A1, very strong as well. You know, you can see it's scaling really well. All these stats is all about the scale potential. A3, not so good because it's, again, it's an AoE. Hydra, you really suffer for any AoE. You lose like 35 to 40%, if not higher, of your damage. But very, very strong A2. Probably one of the strongest damage dealers in Hydra and Clan Boss you can have in the game. Now in his alternate, he switches more towards a HP base. He's more of a support-based champion, not as powerful. He's a bit like Ophidius. His base form's really good. The alternate form, you probably never will go into. We got more of a lean towards HP multipliers, a lot less attack. 0.16 times HP, 0.25 times HP, 0.27 times HP, standard HP multipliers, and with a flat 0.7 attack. So you can see the difference. He's not a damage dealer on this second form. It doesn't do anywhere near as much damage. We're really in like the weak to the lower half. He's very much more AoE focused, which penalizes him far more in Hydra. His abilities to do debuffs and that might be more valuable. The debuffs in his alternate form are better, but the damage is all in his primary form. Then we have one of the coolest looking mythicals in the game, the Calamitus. His attack is 1533, very, very high. We've got 2.1 times attack times 2, 1.6 times attack times 4. He's a bit like Ramantu and the way that he single target stacks, a bit like Riho, but he attacks 4 times. And a 4 times 8 attack on the A3. So what does that do for his multipliers? Kind of okay. It's all godlike. It's all in the top 15%. He's okay. He will probably just not be as crazy as you think. His A3 in Hydra is really poor. The A2 is really good in Hydra. The A2 is really good in Arena. He's kind of like, he's okay. He's not really like the best at anything, but he's decent on these forms. You can see he's kind of like the top 50%. He's a good thing to throw in there. On the alternate, we are still in attack form. 4 times attack, 4.2 times attack, but he does get 10% more damage per debuff. When we estimate these debuffs, it does change based on content area. For Arena, we're looking at very little. I think there's maybe 2 debuffs we assume. For Hydra, we're looking at 10. We assume you're going to be able to stack the debuff bar. And in Clan Boss is the same. And then early game content, I think, is about 3 to 4 we consider them. So these numbers are very dependent on the area we have. So that is a scale, and the A3 is a 4.4 attack. His A2 is much stronger. You can see it's at number 9 in the Clan Boss, very strong. About 89 in Hydra for the A2. The A3 is a bit weak in Hydra because it's AoE. The A1 is okay. But again, he's a good damage dealer. I think his alternate form is a bit stronger. I just don't know whether it's like, I've seen Nubraids doing, he's a bit underwhelmed by it, but I think he actually might have some legs in it. He's one of those that I would have to play test to really get the most out of, but the numbers suggest his alternate A2 could be quite strong. Now we come to the big addition. This guy is the number 1 arena damage dealer in the game right now. The number 1. He is so incredibly strong. His passive is additive, so once you reach 10 turns before taking a turn, he no longer takes damage. He's immune to damage, okay? Once he has not taken 10 turns and everyone else in the battle has taken 10 turns, he is now immune to damage. Every single time he doesn't take a turn, he increases his A3 damage by 20%. Every buff that he steals, he will increase his damage by 20%. He does the Siegfried and Wukong effect, where if that damage kills someone, excess damage is sent over to all enemies. And because you can scale it so hard, it does incredible amounts of damage. It will do a lot of excessive damage. It won't crit, but like Sun Wukong, other things that are not critical damage can multiply it. Masteries, books, other effects, weaken, all of these things will increase that. It just won't be critical damage. His A1 is also super unique. If he attacks anyone from the Corrupted Alliance, Demon Spawn, Undead Hordes, Night Revenants, he won't use his A1. He'll use that A3 that I've just talked about. And it is insane. He's a very good base attack. Everything about this guy screams Ultimate Death Knight with damage. That's how you would build him. 2 turn Stone Skin, Ultimate Death Knight with damage. Or even 1 turn if you wanted to just one-shot it. Ultimate Death Knight with damage is how I would build him. So we've got a 6 times attack. This is the same as Siegfried on the A3. It doesn't ignore 50% defense, but think of all the multipliers. If you don't take 10 turns, 200%. If you steal 2 buffs, 40% damage. Every single thing of this is just multiplying and multiplying. Get ready for this. So the A1, pretty average, nothing to be scared about. The A2 is okay, but pretty average, right? When I say average, it's like top 15%, but it's not breaking anything. He is the number 1 damage dealer in Arena. This is based on stealing 3 buffs and 8 turn difference. Now, Think of how many times you fought Ultimate Death Knight and he hasn't taken a turn for 8 turns. It has to be enemy or allies. So there could be 3 and 4. So 1 turn for every single champion in the fight. That's 7. So we've put this at 8. And it is the #1 damage dealing ability in the game for Arena. He is the new king of Arena damage dealer. If you were going to go for any champion in the game, if you care about Arena, it's probably this one, because he's just insanely strong. You would build him exactly how you build Ultimate Death Knight in terms of high thing, because even if they strip your stone skin, as long as they don't crowd control you, they can't do any damage to you. You're immune. After 10 turns, you're immune to damage. That passive is incredibly strong. You do need 3 Sacred Orders, but they could literally be throwaway champions. And you still have people like Cardiel in there, right? You still have really good champions. Godseeker Neri. There are really good champions you can put in there to make it up to the faction unity. The new king of Arena is Falmond. Mark my words, he's #1. Insane. And finally, we've got Eostrid Dreamsong. Attack, 1035. She's attack based, but let's face it, we know with some of these support champions, even though their multipliers look good, the damage is not going to be there because their base attack is a lot lower. She does have good multipliers, 5.4 times attack, 4.9 times attack. They are good multipliers, so she'll get a lot from the Blessing Flat Edition. When she gets like that 750 attack, it will do more for her than, say, your 4 times attack multipliers. But you can see that the damage here, it's really not that there. The A1 is okay. The A2 is just not there on the numbers. It's quite weak. It's quite average. So definitely not a damage dealer. But we all know that she's going to be very good for providing damage. Increase attack, decrease defense, weaken. So it's the only champion in Raid Shadow Legends that has this unique combination of those 3 effects. Increase attack, increase speed, and weaken. Those 4 together, no other champion in the game has it. There are some champions with increased attack and increased speed. Mainly one, which is Frostbringer. And I think the epic high elf that cleanses has increased speed. I could be wrong, but that increased attack and increased speed combo is very rare. So that is a powerful thing. She's an offensive Nekmothar. If you want to do more damage, whilst Nekmothar will help you stay alive longer with the decreased attack and leech, she will help you deal more damage with the weak and increased attack. So it's like if you can afford to go a little bit more glass cannon, a little bit more damage, she's the better option. Now, I just want to leave one thing here as well. The game code suggests something might be coming on the 11th of April. That's all I'm going to tell you, because I don't want to steal Playroom's thunder, but I'm going to hype it up to say there is something coming on the 11th. That's all the game code has told me, that something is coming on the 11th. I don't know what it is. I have no information about what it is, but it should be very cool. It should be very interesting. Just what is coming on the 11th. I'll leave you speculate in the comments below what you think it is. But something is coming on the 11th of April that into the game. We'll have to wait and see. But that is the end of the patch notes, guys. Falmond is the new king of Arena. You know, we're waiting to see when we're going to be able to get him. I'd imagine we'll have a Prism Summoning event pretty soon, if in the next couple of days, if not tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. Normally, when the Sand Devil's on, they normally stick on top of the Sand Devil some Prism Shards. Honestly, this guy would be the first one that I would be tempted to be. Maybe I'll pick up a few extra Prisms. It's the first one. Finer was interesting. The Stalwart guy was okay. This guy, I'm like, he is a one-man army. He's insane. He's so strong. We'll see what it comes out with. As always, guys, if you like this content, make sure you hit the likes up and the thumbs up. I will be getting back to doing some videos. I know it's been a week since I put out a video release. It was a pretty hectic week last week with all the regearing event. I will be live on stream tonight at 7:45, 8 p.m. Hopefully I won't be late on the YouTube channel. We're going to be doing some Marius missions pushing. I've got to win some live arena fights. Hopefully I won't lose my brain doing it. So if you want to hang out, chat about Raid, talk about anything that I've discussed in these patch notes videos, make sure you come over to the YouTube and hang out. 8 p.m. UK time, which I don't know what that is in UTC because the clocks have changed now. But there we go, guys. Thanks for watching, as always, and I will catch you in the next video.